Despite Sara's late introduction into the series of Mushoku Tensei, in just that brief moment, she has become a very memorable character. Now, what makes Sara a more interesting character isn't just her personality, it's mostly the dynamic and the relationship that she had with Rudeus. You see, Sara in a way was the girl that saved Rudeus in the solo adventure arc, which for those who don't know what this arc is the most recent arc that the anime has animated, in which we see Rudeus doing his solo adventures now that he's no longer in an adventure group with Eris and Ruger, and still trying to find his mother since she's still missing, and he's trying to make a name for himself so that hopefully maybe his mother will be able to find out that he's still alive and looking for her. But of course, in the meantime, Rudeus isn't going to be alone, and eventually he would find Counter Arrow, a group of adventurers who at first Rudeus had no interest in, but slowly after they spend more time together, Rudeus quickly starts to not really mind being with them, and this included Sara. Of course, while I did say earlier that Sara was the girl that saved Rudeus, at the same time she was also the same girl that broke Rudeus towards the end of the arc. Now, how is it possible? How is it possible for a character to not only save the main protagonist but also break him at the same time? Well, that's what we'll be talking about in today's video. So of course we have to start from the very beginning. As you all know, if you have watched the anime or have read the light novels, Rudeus and Sara's relationship at first didn't start very well, and there was many reasons why Sara didn't like Rudeus to begin with. Well, for one thing, Sara didn't like Rudeus' attitude in the beginning because you have to remember that Rudeus was still trying to overcome with all the things that happened between him and Eris, so because of that he was pretty much isolating himself the entire time in the beginning of the solo adventure arc. This of course annoyed Sara because characters like Suzanne were trying to help Rudeus out, but Rudeus was clearly isolating himself and not wanting to talk. However, this wasn't the only reason why she didn't like Rudeus to begin with. You see, there was a detail that was not mentioned in the anime that gave us another reason why Sara did not like Rudeus at the start, and that simply being because Rudeus was from the Great Rat family. Since his last name is Great Rat, Sara was able to figure out that Rudeus was obviously part of the Great Rat family, and because of that she did not like that because she hated the Great Rat family. And the reason being is because, as is mentioned later on in the light novel, the reason why Sara hates the Great Rat family is because of an incident that happened in her past. You see, it will be revealed that Sara's village was attacked by monsters, and obviously many people will lose their lives during this attack by the monsters, and Sara would have been another victim of this attack if it hadn't been for Suzanne and Timothy, because as is revealed as well, Suzanne and Timothy were the ones that saved Sara. Now you may be wondering, what does this have to do with the Great Rat family? Well, it's revealed also as well that the Great Rat family owned that area that Sara was living in, and after the monster attack, the Great Rat family would make excuses as to why they didn't send help to the village that was being attacked by monsters, and because of that, Sara really despises the Great Rat family after that incident, which to be fair, it's understandable since this is most likely a case of the Great Rat family not sending help to that village since they didn't prioritize in saving people, since they probably thought that they wouldn't get any benefits from doing that action. So because of that, Sara really despises anybody that has the name Great Rat. Even though Rudeus had nothing to do with the incident that happened to her in the past, just simply him being part of the Great Rat family was enough for Sara to treat him very harshly in the beginning. But of course this would all change once she got to know who Rudeus is as a person and realized that he's not really a terrible person, and this will become even more further proven when she becomes very grateful that Rudeus saved her from the monster that took her hostage. And ever since that moment, you can clearly see that not only did Sara not mind being around Rudeus, but you can clearly see that she started developing feelings towards Rudeus. And Rudeus was at first not really seeing this at first, but very quickly he's able to realize that Sara is starting to develop feelings for him. And of course he's very conflicted about this is because, well, he quite recently had a very not so great experience with Eris, so he fears that this is going to be the exact same thing if he does anything with Sara. However, as Sara starts to become more intimate with Rudeus, he decides to give it another shot, and then of course the scene happens in which Rudeus tries to do something with Sara, but obviously due to a unfortunate thing with his body part, he is not able to do anything because of it. And of course this made things between them very awkward, but it will be the thing that Sara would say next that will be the beginning of the downfall of Sara and Rudeus' relationship, as she states that the only reason why she wanted to do it with Rudeus was because she just wanted to repay him for saving her during that whole thing with the monster. Of course this comment did not sit well with Rudeus because it seemed that the only reason why Sara was only getting intimate with him and showing affection towards him was because she was just trying to repay him for saving her. This statement wasn't true whatsoever because Sara did legit have feelings for Rudeus but wasn't being honest about them. And of course, after this comment, Rudeus would once again become depressed. As for Rudeus, this will be the second time a girl messes with him, and because of that, not only does he become depressed, but he also starts to drink very heavily. And of course, the stuff happens with Soldat, and then once Rudeus starts to become open with Soldat and tells him about the current problems that he is facing, one of them being mainly the one with his body part, this of course leads to Soldat trying to help Rudeus by taking him to the Red District. And even though Rudeus does meet a very nice woman that goes by the name of Elise, obviously things don't go well and Rudeus' problem is still unsolved. However, because he was drinking very heavily, this is where Rudeus starts to really take things too far and starts to make some very not so great comments about Sara. And to make things worse, Sara was very close into hearing this because it seemed that she came to try to talk to Rudeus about what happened the other day, but after hearing what Rudeus said about her, she changed her mind very quickly and does not want to see or talk to Rudeus ever again. This of course once again breaks Rudeus, and he is once again in a very deep depression, which if it wasn't for Soldat in that moment, Rudeus would have actually gone through with what he was about to do, which was ending his own life. Now of course, in these moments you could argue that this was entirely Rudeus' fault for making those very nasty comments about Sara, but at the same time you also have to take in consideration that this all happened, the reason why Rudeus was even depressed to begin with was because of that comment that she made when they had that very awkward night between each other, in which she lied to Rudeus, saying that the reason why she wanted to do things with him was because she just wanted to pay him back for saving her. So with these details alone, it's very obvious that both of the parties, both Rudeus and Sara, in some way are at fault for the situation that they are both in. However, this wouldn't be the end of Rudeus and Sara, because this wouldn't be like in the anime, in which after this whole happened, Rudeus was given the option to join Soldat's adventure group because they were setting off to go on a new adventure very soon. That's not where things end. You see, there was actually a few scenes that were cut from the anime that happened in the light novel. After Rudeus agrees to join Soldat's adventure group and go with them, afterwards there's a moment between Sara and some members of Counter Arrow in which of course she is venting her frustration and couldn't believe that Rudeus said all those terrible things about her. Now of course, even though she is upset, characters like Suzanne and Timothy are still trying to help her out and trying to give her helpful advice, saying that maybe she should have listened to Rudeus' side instead of jumping into conclusions, because maybe if they had talked things out, they probably would have fixed some misunderstandings between them and maybe things would have been patched up. But because of course Sara did what she did, which was slap Rudeus after hearing those comments, that did not happen, and now because of that, things have gotten worse between them. But after a conversation with the other Counter Arrow members, she eventually realizes that the entire situation that she is at right now isn't entirely Rudeus' fault, so she decides to try to patch things up with Rudeus once again. And moving forward, as she's trying to look for Rudeus, she encounters Elise, the woman that was at the brothel who was trying to help with Rudeus' problem. Of course, this was something that was not in the anime and this was actually cut from the anime, but basically in this scene, Elise confronts Sara about the whole situation that happened between her and Rudeus, since it seems that she found out what happened afterwards after he left the brothel, and is very disappointed and upset at Sara that she didn't hear what Rudeus had to say and never heard his side of the entire situation. As Elise states in this conversation that even though she hasn't really known Rudeus for a really long time, she could easily tell that Rudeus is not a terrible person and is just somebody that is going through a lot of personal issues, and reveals to Sara that Rudeus is no longer in town and he has left town for his own reasons. This of course shocks Sara, and she becomes very heartbroken at the fact that she never patched things up with Rudeus. After her conversation with Elise, we then get a moment in which Sara is in her room being extremely sad and wonders what she could have done in this entire situation that would have prevented the outcome of it, but is very hopeful that maybe someday she will encounter Rudeus once again, and hopefully they could have a conversation in which they patch things up and are in good terms, and that will be the actual ending of the solo adventure arc. And that's pretty much the entire story of Sara and Rudeus' relationship, a girl who at first was one of the main reasons why Rudeus was trying to get back at his feet since the relationship started to improve. And of course, while Rudeus was still skeptical of the love that Sara had for him, he was willing to give it another chance to see that maybe, just maybe, Sara will be the one to not give him the same experience that he felt he had with Eris. But after Sara's comments, Rudeus clearly started to wonder if everything that he was doing was even worth it. He wondered if he's ever going to have happiness, or is he just simply going to be miserable for the rest of his life. Of course, it's not me just saying that Rudeus was the victim in this entire situation, no, because he also made mistakes as well, and he also screwed up in a lot of ways. This is just simply a case of two people not being clear with each other and not talking things out in order to resolve the misunderstandings, and that was really unfortunate to see. And that's pretty much the entire video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.